Hi, I'm going to be reading from my book, Spiritual Polyamory. The first section is called Loa, the Source of Spiritual Polyamory. Love of all is the phrase from which the word Loa has been created. Loa is a lofty goal. How can we love everyone? What about terrorists? What about rapists, murderers? Why would we even want to love them? The reason you would want to love them is that it hurts to do otherwise. When you are armored, you will not notice how it feels to see another as not worthy of love. When you become sensitive, you have no choice but to realize that anything less than love hurts. It hurts the other person, and because we are all connected, it hurts you too. The key to being able to practice Loa is understanding the difference between a person and their behavior, which arises from ego. Ego is a collection of beliefs arising from fear and the illusion of separation. Often when a person hates another, what they truly hate is ego. My ego is no better or worse than any other person's ego. Egos always arise from illusion, and are therefore all without credibility. To hate another person because their action arises from ego is to hate yourself for anything you do that arises from ego. The very process of hating arises from the ego's false belief that hating will place you above another person. Loa is the end of struggle. It is the beginning of lightness and peace. Much of the writing within this book challenges monogamy. I question systems. It is part of who I am. When I'm being critical of a system, I'm not being critical of the people within that system. To judge a person within the system of monogamy would arise from the ego within me that craves the illusion of superiority. I recognize the ego as both fragile and strong. It is fragile in that it is completely illogical. It is strong in that it has arisen from years of environmental and biological influence. However, I believe that our tendency is not our destiny. We may give the ego power, but it is, at its core, empty and weak. Poly people are often assumed to overvalue sex. However, I believe that monogamy is a system that overvalues sex, and here is why. If you are monogamous, you are most likely okay with your lover sharing his or her love, time, understanding, compassion, forgiveness, non-judgment, and attention. The one thing you will probably not stand for is the sharing of their sexual intimacy. This implies that you value it above all else. It is the one thing you must own to feel safe. I challenge this belief. I have experienced the values of monogamy wholly and without doubt. I found that the end result was, ultimately, suffering, and that letting go of control is part of the path to freedom and wholeness. We deeply crave unconditional love. If we do not question the supposedly unconditional love that carries with it the condition of sexual exclusivity, then we remain ignorant and incomplete in our understanding of what we can experience and share. It is so clear upon a deeper examination of sexuality that our desire to possess another's body arises not from love, but from fear. Sociobiologically speaking, we fear that our mate will procreate with another, thus diminishing the likelihood of our own genes being perpetuated. This primal desire to control another is a tendency which we are outgrowing, since our true immortality is not achieved through procreation, but is a natural outcome of existing as a spiritual being. So to go on attempting to control what others do with their body is to forget your true nature, a spirit in an ape suit. Give strength to your spirit self. Understand the tendencies of your ape suit without believing that you are a prisoner of your biology. There are other false reasons to control another's body. You may fear being alone. Person addiction is pervasive in our world and understandable, as when we are left alone we are forced to experience how we truly feel. In some ways it feels easier to pay attention to how others are experiencing themselves so that we may avoid our personal work. However, when we are able to be comfortable with ourselves, we are also much more capable of being authentic and healthy in our relationships. Perhaps you have been conditioned to associate having a lover with having personal worth. If this is the case, you may find yourself consciously or unconsciously controlling your lover's body so they don't leave you for another person. However, in an enlightened system, why would you ever leave someone you loved if they accepted you unconditionally. You may spend different amounts of time with your lover in the future, but if both people involved in this relationship trust their path, they understand that whatever situation they find themselves in is perfect for their current lessons. Therefore, there is ultimately no benefit that could possibly come from trying to limit another person's behavior. As you read this book, I ask that you define spiritual polyamory for yourself. I define it for myself as utilizing the philosophy of polyamory in my personal development as a human, trying to realize my spiritual truth. I am working towards Loa and feel that polyamory arises naturally from a state of loving all people. This path requires owning jealousy as it arises, accepting others as they are, developing my own sense of personal wholeness, and letting go of the belief that loving someone more means loving someone else less. Much of the philosophy of polyamory can better be understood if you use how people do friendship as an analogy. Sexuality has many charged associations because the world we live in is, as a whole, sexually immature. If instead you think in terms of having multiple friendships, you may be able to better understand the philosophy of a spiritual approach to polyamory. For example, you can most likely appreciate that if you have a friend who makes a new friend, that doesn't have to pose a threat to the relationship you have with your friend. You want that person to be happy. You can therefore practice compersion, the opposite of jealousy, which states that you gain happiness when those you care about are more happy. This involves non-attachment to your ego's goals of having everyone to yourself. Once you are able to see how sexual possession has become an accepted attachment in your society, you can then introduce sexuality into the above multiple friendship scenario and see how your responsibility to yourself is to release your attachments as opposed to struggling to preserve them. If you are polycurious and not quite sure how you feel, ask yourself the following as you read this book. Does my desire for sexual intimacy with one person for the rest of my physical existence arise from personal congruence or cultural conditioning and or fear of loneliness or abandonment or a rejection? If you decide that sexual intimacy with more than one person is personally congruent for you, ask yourself, which method of loving is ultimately a statement of my true self, serial or sustainable? If you are polyamorous and know it, it is my hope that the ideas put forth in this book will help you to enjoy the journey with greater clarity, purpose, and self-understanding. Regardless of who you are, remember Loa, it is more than possible, it is our destiny. The book is Spiritual Polyamory. It's available at unification.com. It's also available at spiritualpolyamory.com. And at spiritualpolyamory.com you can find a link to a free discussion group that you're welcome to join if you'd like to discuss the ideas or any related ideas to this book. Thanks for listening.